moments in a Dane County courtroom on Friday as Circuit Court Judge Frank Remington held former State Supreme Court Justice Michael Gableman in contempt of court. During the hearing over whether his office had properly handled records for the ongoing election investigation, Gableman criticized the judge, refused to answer questions, and repeatedly tried to interrupt both people.
So on Wednesday, when the judge starts telling my office that if I were you, I'd get a lawyer because you could go to jail, all of a sudden, I somehow think that my personal rights are at stake, too.
Mr. Gableman?
Yes, Judge Remington.
You have had a long and storied career serving the public, both as a... Let me finish, please.
Sure, if you'll let me finish.
Well, no.
Okay.
This is my courtroom.
Right.
You had a courtroom in Burnett County.
I did.
You had a courtroom in the East Wing of the state capitol. I do not need to tell you how I expect you to control yourself and the behavior that I expect of a witness on this stand. No question has been asked of you. You are not given the opportunity to make a speech and to make a statement.
And when I was a judge, I tried my best to act with fairness and impartiality and without bias to one side or the other. Now, some days I was less perfect than others, okay? But at the very least, I always let the lawyers and the parties know what the issue was that we were going to talk about.
I am joined now by Cap Times political reporter Jack Kelly. We have a lot to cover.
We do. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start with the hearing today. You watched this hearing. Walk me through some of the drama inside this courtroom.
Yeah, so the hearing actually got off to kind of a peculiar start. There were a series of kind of procedural efforts from Gableman's attorney to actually adjourn the hearing. Obviously, you know, there had been a separate hearing on Wednesday earlier in the week to determine whether Gableman was going to be forced to testify or not. The judge obviously said that he had to. And then when he actually took the stand is when kind of the drama unfolded. Once he sat down for testimony, which only lasted about 4 minutes, you know, he accused the judge of being an advocate for American Oversight, the liberal watchdog group that had brought the lawsuit against him, and several other lawsuits related to his review as well. And it got pretty fiery. He was interrupting the judge. He was interrupting the attorney for American Oversight, Krista Westerberg, who was asking him questions. It was unusual, especially for a former state Supreme Court justice and a former circuit court judge himself, Gableman.
Yeah, as we just heard from the judge, I mean, this is someone who has been in courtrooms so much of his life, which I guess makes this so unusual and remarkable today. Yeah,
I mean, I have followed dozens of these hearings over the last several months, as most political reporters here in the state have. I hadn't seen anything quite like this. You know, we've seen fiery moments from Gableman before when he was testifying before the Assembly Committee on Campaigns and Elections. I didn't necessarily expect to see it today while he was under oath sitting on the witness stand in the courtroom.
That sets us up well for the next thing I want to talk about. You had a piece out this week going far back to the very early stages of this Assembly-led investigation. They had just hired a couple of retired police officers, and your report found, based on records that you reviewed, that these officers were paid thousands of dollars for doing, quote, basically nothing. Walk me through, how did this happen?
Yeah, so in the early stages of the review, Assembly Speaker Robin Voss pledged to hire some retired police officers to review election administration here in Wisconsin. These two gentlemen, their names are Michael Sandvik and Stephen Page, were among those retired police officers. They were hired based on their contracts and based on declarations that they submitted as a part of a lawsuit. They were hired on June 1st of last year, and they worked, one of them until the middle of July, one until late July. And in these declarations, they which are actually part of one of the lawsuits that's involving Gableman in the review, they make the claim, they say, quote, I produced, quote, almost no substantive work, unquote, during the period that I was working under contract with the legislature. So I was curious, were they actually paid for their work, since they admitted that they basically did nothing? They were. I submitted a records request to the chief clerk, obtained the invoices that they had submitted to the legislature. The chief clerk confirmed that they had paid them, and between the two of them, they earned a little bit more than $11,000. basically to do nothing, as they said in these court documents.
Yeah, as they themselves said. And I guess it just kind of continues the story of we have watched tens of thousands of dollars get used in similar ways throughout this investigation, whether it's through lawsuits or other means like this. Let's pivot quickly to, there's a lot of news in Wisconsin Elections Commission. There was a gap. Assembly Speaker Robin Vos has filled it this week. He's appointed a tax attorney, also a former commissioner. So he's someone, Don Millis, coming in with a lot of experience. Today, what happens?
Yeah, so Don Millis comes in, his first meeting as a returning member to the Wisconsin Elections Commission. He's actually elected chair of the commission. Under the rules of the commission, the chairpersonship has to switch off every 2 years. So Ann Jacobs, the outgoing chair, is the Democrat. Millis came in. He was one of 2 commissioners that was eligible to be the next chair. It was him, and then it was also GOP Commissioner Robert Spindell. Of course, Spindell posed as a false Trump elector after the 2020 election. And so it was interesting. They had a whole meeting today. They heard ballot challenges and a whole slew of other issues, and then they kind of concluded with this election. Spindell nominated himself. None of the other commissioners took that up, and then Millis also sought the position and ended up getting the chairmanship on a 5-1 vote.
A lot of context we could add there, but really quickly, another big news coming out of this same meeting. So Tim Michels, he's the Trump-backed Republican candidate for governor. That's big news in and of itself from last week. Democrats, someone files a challenge, a complaint with the Wisconsin Elections Commission saying that, there's issues with where he lives. There's a big unanimous decision today. Walk me through really quickly what we saw from that. And are we surprised?
I would say we are not surprised. A Madison voter represented by Jeff Mandel, who is a prominent attorney with Law Forward, the kind of liberal legal group, here in Madison. They were contending that Michels didn't deserve to be on the ballot because there were issues with his nomination papers. They were incredibly technical. At one point during the meeting today of the commission, they were discussing the definition of mailing address offered by the United States Postal Service. When they got down to it, the commissioners determined that voters, not them, should decide who's the next governor of Wisconsin. Ultimately just voted 6-0 to reject the challenge, and he will appear on the primary ballot in August.
There's a lot of news happening today, this week. We talked about this earlier. We can barely keep track of how many bylines you've had out today, plus a newsletter. He's a tired guy. Thanks so much for coming on the show. We will be right back.